Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. Our guest today is Mark Bisbing. You probably haven't heard that name. Maybe you have, but you've heard many of the names that he has associated with in a long and you can absolutely say storied career in the world of marketing. He has worked for Nike. He has worked with the Nike Tour. He has worked in the world of bowling. He has worked for the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. He is one of the primary reasons why Tiger Woods became somebody who was involved with Nike, getting an association with him built from his teen years and just about all the way through the process of him signing with Nike. We'll hear that interesting story. We've got stories about Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Michael Jordan and just trying to work hard, have a vision, and build things that seemed maybe a little bit improbable in various areas of enterprise, many of them sports, many of them outside of it, but all in marketing. He's a great storyteller with great stories to tell. And coming up next, it's Mark Bisbing. Like I said, maybe you haven't heard that name, but you're going to hear this story, and it's a great one. And he's got many, many good ones to tell and has had a career that's really unbelievable. I'm holding his resume in my hand, and the things he's accomplished at many, many different levels and places is truly remarkable, as is this interview coming your way next on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing here. Well, it stormed. The last thing you want to mess with is dealing with it, but now you're stuck with dozens of people knocking on your door telling you everything they think you want to hear. Do not trust your biggest asset to a company that lies dormant until it storms, only to change their name and wither away after their substandard work is complete. Call Easton Roofing for a free roof evaluation. 913-257-5426. 913-257-5426. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. Time to spend a few minutes with my good friend Jeff Dillon from Dillon's Heating and Cooling. And Jeff, what differentiates your company from others in the industry?
Plain and simple, we're honest. We have integrity, and we're going to do things right the first time. There's way too many companies out there that lie, cheat, hide things from the homeowner or customer, and we're not about that. It's kind of funny sometimes. I actually am so honest with some people, it kind of surprises them. But sometimes it's good for business, sometimes it's bad for business. But ultimately, it's the kind of business that I want to run, is an honest one.
And that family way of treating things is part of your slogan, and it's also part of one of your great features that you offer to customers.
Our slogan is like family. Our most popular maintenance plan is called the Family Plan. It's very similar to a lot of ones out there. The little tweak that we do to ours, 1% off for every 2 years. They have a continued maintenance plan with us. If they have a maintenance plan for 10 years, then we give them 5% off. No questions asked.
You can find out more about Dillon's Heating and Cooling and all their great range of services at dillonsheatingandcooling.com. That's Dillon's with an S. The phone number, 913-214-1343. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Mark, this is going to be a fascinating journey through the world of marketing and your world as well. And, of course, you have had a long and varied career in marketing, and right now you're working for Jobs for America's Graduates, have come back to the Kansas area where you've spent a small portion of your life. Tell us about what you're doing now.
I am working for, as you said, Jobs for America's Graduates, or JAGK, as we refer to ourselves. We are a nonprofit. We're part of a national organization that's been around for about 40 years, and we work with at-risk students that are at risk of graduating from high school. It's an in-school elective class where we employ the teachers that actually teach it in school. The kids have to qualify through, there's 35 barriers, I think, that we list that would be challenges for the kids, and they have to qualify for at least 3 to 5 to get into the class. We have about, I think, a max 60 kids per class. It's not 60 in one class, but 60 over the course of a school day. And we basically get them on the path to graduate and then mentor them post-graduation for up to a year to help them determine should they go to college, should they go to trade school, military service, or direct to workforce. And our main mission is to basically make them employable at the end of high school graduation. So we do resume building, mock interviews, job shadowing, so that if they have to go to work out of high school to support the family or whatever they're doing, they're able to do that and equipped to do that. So we definitely engage with companies on employer engagement to daylight job opportunities, what skill sets are needed, just to perk the interest of the kids to see what path they want to follow. But the main thing is getting them not to be on the street or homeless or in poverty or whatever, but to get them through high school and on a good path. Our graduation rate in Kansas is about 97% for our students, as compared to the Kansas state average of about 84%. So we know the program works.
We're going to talk a lot about sports and Tiger Woods and a whole bunch of different things, but this sounds like a different thing. Is this sort of a labor of love type of thing, or how did you come to this?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I, between the two of us, have 7 kids and 8 grandkids. So we're definitely kind of family oriented. For me, and I even had these, kind of thoughts even at Nike on what impacts might have on, social community and so on. But yeah, this is probably a labor of love. I wanted to do something. I kind of look at this as maybe my last hurrah for a job, and I wanted to do something that definitely made an impact on people's lives. And when I saw this, I had never heard of them before. And once I kind of dug into who they are and what they were doing, it was like, yeah, this is really something, that I want to do. And we knew we were going to transition from Portland back to Kansas, just to kind of be centrally located to where our kids are around the country. And when it came up, I, interviewed and kind of told them I wasn't your typical kind of fundraising development guy, more of a sales and marketing guy, and would approach it that way, from building the brand, positioning, using words like leverage and activation, sponsorship, and stuff like that. So definitely excited about what we're doing in this opportunity.
You grew up in South Central California. What was life like for you? And tell me where you're from.
I was born in a small town called Porterville, which sits between Fresno and Bakersfield in the southern Central Valley. California, to me, was the sunshine state. I know Florida wants to claim that, but California really was. I think what I remember most is just, days of sunshine, playing outside. We were kind of a middle-income family. I would say life was really good. I, played a lot of sports. I played football, basketball, golf. I played 2 years of baseball. Wasn't very good at it. And so I just loved living in California. I remember when my parents came to me and said we're moving to Oregon between my sophomore and junior years in high school, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not making that move, because I'm going to be the starting quarterback in the varsity football team as a junior. I'm not going anywhere. And they were like, no, we're moving as a family. So we ended up moving to Oregon and had a kind of completely different sports experience in Oregon, both good and bad. I'm still a long-term Dodger fan. My first baseball game was in 1961 at the Coliseum before Dodger Stadium was built, and the Dodgers played an exhibition game against the Indians, and Sandy Koufax pitched. So I've been a fan ever since.
That's a good reason to be a fan, that's for sure. You mentioned your sports background as you were going through your high school years, and you said that the transition experience wasn't the greatest for you. But what were you thinking about your future, if you were thinking about it at that point in time?
Well, I think, when I was younger, like any kid, you think, well, I'm going to play in the NFL or I'm going to play in the NBA or whatever. And I definitely felt like I was, good enough to compete at certain levels. And when I got to Oregon, in California, I lived in Redding, California, Northern California at that time. There was no state championship. It was more you played within your league or conference. You might have played another team, like a bowl game type of thing at the end of the year. When you moved to Oregon, it was kind of like being in the NFL. There was a state championship. It was much more of a business. I didn't really pair well with the coach I had at the high school I went to. And I remember asking to actually be moved down to the JV team so I could get playing time to compete for the starting position. And he thought I was from Mars and kind of threw me up against the wall and just ranted about not being a man or whatever. And I'm like, no, I think I'm being smart about this to try and get playing time to compete. So it just kind of put me on a different path, and which is one of the reasons why I didn't I got hurt my senior year, which kind of derailed any interest in going to college, even community college, to play. And so that's why I ended up not going to college. Was a big reason. I ended up just kind of jumping into the workforce.
That's probably at that time it wasn't maybe as different a decision, but still, most people who are reasonably capable of it did go to college. Was that a difficult decision at all for you, or did you just feel like this is I know what my strengths are and I know what I can do?
It was difficult. I mean, obviously, all my friends were going off to college. My parents worked in the banking industry and ended up getting into a management training program. My mom went to the savings and loan, and they were actually looking to bring in sort of younger people maybe that hadn't gone to college to teach them their system, their ways and processes, and not necessarily bring in somebody from college that might have other preconceived notions. And so I did that. And at the same time, for whatever reason, fortunately, unfortunately, probably fortunately, there was a semi-pro football league in Portland. And I ended up playing semi-pro football kind of during that late 70s time period and probably into 80, 81. So I kind of got the gratification of playing at a higher level with ex-college and pro players.
Right.
But still was working, and I got married, had kids early. I got married when I was 23 and had kids at 26. So it just kind of worked for, like I said, what decisions I made. But I mean, when all my friends were graduating from college in 79, I was a branch manager in a little town southwest of Portland. As they were all getting out of college and then trying to find work, I was already 4 years in.
Absolutely, that is the case. And you did work in banking for several years, but then you did go to work for Nike, but it's not as if you were going into work at Nike as the, vice president of marketing or something. You really worked your way up.
Yeah, it's funny because I started in 81, and so technically Nike was about 9 years old. So they were still a young company. My best friend from high school, best man at my wedding, worked for Nike, worked in the promo warehouse in Beaverton. And I had left the bank and was working for a modeling company. I worked with some builders that I helped fund when I was at the bank. And they bankrupted it in 9 months. I don't know how you do that, but they did it. And so I was just kind of looking. My first child was due in November. And I talked to Greg, and he goes, hey, we may have an opening in the warehouse if you're interested. And so I met with the manager at the warehouse, and he looked at my resume, and he's like, you're way overqualified for this. And I said, yeah, but I'm in a situation right now where I have a child coming, and we're just interested in, I come to work, do the job, you pay me, I go home. There's no politics, there's no stress. Just, I'm ready for that. I know I'll kind of remotivate and want to do more stuff later. So he hired me. I started working there for $5 an hour in 1981. And I was full-time. I was part-time, considered part-time, not a full-time employee. They said, well, we might be letting a guy go. There may be a position available. So they let this guy go. They came to me and they said, yeah, we want to offer you a full-time position for $6.10 an hour. And I'm like, I'll take it. So yeah, I started in the warehouse, basically just the promo warehouse was set up to handle product going specifically to our contracted athletes, college programs, just promotional activities, not what we call the mainline warehouse, though nothing from sales went out of there. So it was strictly just for athletes. So randomly, on any given day, you might see an athlete or a coach or somebody walking through the building and picking up merchandise and so on. So it was kind of fun. And then I got into inventory control management, eventually moved into the home office and kind of made my way to golf. And the golf story is kind of funny how that began as well.
Well, do tell.
So I was working in inventory control, got moved into what they called this new launch area, which housed at that time the new Jordan launch, what they called the College Colors launch, and I think other products that they were looking to bring out as new kind of in '84. And Nike was famous for kind of moving people around and adjusting. So like you might work in tennis and you'd be there for a year or whatever, and then they go, okay, you're going to go work in track and field now, kind of continually trying to bring new perspectives and thoughts. So I'm really kind of a data analyst in this lunch area, and I get called into the office of Jack Joyce, who was the vice president at the time. And fast forward, he's the guy who started Rogue Ale out on the Oregon coast after he left Nike. But he pulls me into his office, and Jack's kind of a guy who likes to manage by controversy. And he's saying a couple things. He looks at me and he goes, he goes, I don't like you. And I'm a little nervous. I'm like, am I getting fired today? And I go, really, Jack, why is that? And he says, because everybody else does. And I laugh. I go, that's not a bad thing. And he goes, I just want you to go out. He said, I want you to go out there and just kind of piss somebody off for no good reason. Whatever. And I go, Jack, that's just not how I operate. Whatever. He's like, okay, whatever. On Monday morning, you're going to work with Bob Wood in the golf area, golf category. Whatever. I go, didn't know we had a golf category. I mean, I kind of knew there were some shoes out there. He goes, yeah, we're going to make it a category, and you're going to work for Bob. He's asked for you to come and help him. Okay. So didn't apply for the job, didn't qualify for the job, just was sent over there to help in 1984. And over the next 10 years, as you probably saw from my information, really put a lot of things in place, from the college program to the camps to the Nike tour to recruiting athletes, including Tiger.
Nike tour didn't begin as the Nike tour. What was it at the very, very beginning? Ben Hogan tour. That's right. And
the Hogan tour.
Right. So
yeah, the Hogan tour.
Because I actually played in a Hogan tour Pro-Am at one time, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Where at? What city?
In near Utica, New York. It was actually at the Colgate golf course, Colgate University golf course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great events. Yeah.
Yep.
Did great for those smaller communities around the country. So we called second tier ADI markets. And the PGA Tour came to us in 91. We met with them. Gary Stevenson was the VP of marketing at the time. And they came in and made a pitch to us to somehow get involved. Peter Jacobson was on their advisory board. He was a staff member of ours, so he facilitated that meeting. And they just pitched us on getting involved somehow. And they pitched us things like sponsoring a fitness trailer or sponsoring a full-on tour event, for a week. And they had the Nike tour in the mix. So there's probably 7 things they kind of lobbed at us. And we were like, what what you don't understand is Nike is less than 1% of Nike's overall business. So it's not like they've got this big budget. I mean, they were hoping that they were talking more to Nike.
Right.
So after the meeting, my boss, who's the head of sports marketing, we met, and he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, well, it's all really interesting. I said, definitely would love to do something with them. I said, the only thing interesting to me on that list is the Nike tour. I said, I don't want to spend, at the time, probably $1 million to $2 million for just 1 week of activity. I said, the Nike tour gives us year-round exposure, but it was, probably a $3 to $5 million a year cost. So clearly above even a single event. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, that's not going to happen. He goes, the only way it's going to happen is if you, kind of champion it, build a business model that makes sense, and can kind of work it through the system. But he looked at me and goes, but it's not going to happen. Because you go back to, we're less than 1% of Nike's overall business. So
right. Obviously
it did happen. And obviously there's some interesting stories within that. I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but it shouldn't have happened. But clearly it definitely should not have happened.
What do you think the key was to it happening?
Well, in the end, I found out that, so at the time, you got Phil Knight as CEO, you had a guy named Dick Donahue, who was the president of Nike at the time. Dick Donahue came out of the JFK White House. He worked in the administration there, so he was definitely connected into D.C., legislators, politicians, and the whole thing. They had 2 tournaments. Texarkana was hosted by Senator David Pryor, and we had another event. I can't remember right now what it was, but there were basically 2 senators that had their names attached to these Hogan Tour events at the time would become Nike Tour events. The business plan I put in, really everybody that saw it was like, well, this is kind of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we do this? Because we could sell enough product and do things to justify the cost. It really gave us a lot of coverage. You owned a sports league, for crying out loud. I mean, you couldn't do that in baseball, football, basketball. I mean, this was going to be, in a sense, the minor leagues of golf, and it was going to be our league. And the big pitch was, we're going to be in the sports section of every newspaper, website, whatever, from Thursday to Monday. And it's going to be PGA Tour, Champions Tour, Nike Tour. And again, you can't do that. It's going to be named that Nike Tour. So when you read it, it was going to be branded. But I think in the end, what Phil and Dick saw in it was this potential to network within the DC environment to help with taxes and tariffs and import fees and all that kind of stuff. So I think they saw a bigger or something beyond golf and could have that conversation with the PGA Tour as a partner. So I think if I had to put money on it, I think that's what swayed it for Phil and Dick at the time.
So during this particular period, you had started to develop a relationship with the Tiger Woods camp, I guess, as it were, from a very early age. So let's start to get into that, because obviously that would create Nike Golf, basically, as we came to know it, and Tiger Woods was the mainstay of it. But that, it sounds, in looking at your resume and reading some stuff, it looks like this was a long and arduous process.
It was like anything. I think for perspective, too, so the Nike Tour came online in 1992. 93 was the first season. So as I tell this Tiger story, you'll kind of see, how things could have changed had it not happened. So 93 was the tour. So I started talking to Tiger in 1990. And as I say, I found him. I mean, Tiger was going to be discovered or found. He was probably already on the golf radar screen for the most. I mean, he was playing Titleist equipment. He was wearing LeMode apparel. So people in golf kind of knew who he was. So I had signed Mike Holder, who was the golf coach at Oklahoma State in 1988, 87, 88. And at the time, Mike was probably the best college coach in the country. Oklahoma State was the best team. I think in the 10-year period, they finished no worse than third, the national championship every year. So I called Mike one day in probably 89, 90, maybe early 90. And I said, hey, Mike, one of the things we do is we look for athletes that are kind of off the radar, that are maybe younger, that we should maybe be paying attention to. I said, we found, Andre Agassi at the Bollettieri Tennis Academy when he was 14 and developed a relationship and parlayed that into what they did with him at Nike. I said, is there anybody out there that I should be looking at? And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, there's this kid from Southern California named Tiger Woods. He goes, I'm not even recruiting him. He just turned pro out of high school. And I went, Mike, has that ever happened before? And he goes, no. He goes, but if anybody could do it, he goes, this kid would be the one. Like, okay. I mean, if Mike Holder's telling you that, he's, considered the best golf recruiter at that point in time in college golf, I'm going to listen. So I kind of got out the schedule and sort of looked to find, where he was playing. He was playing AJGA events across the country. And picked the Big Eye Insurance Classic in Michigan that year to fly up and meet him. I had kind of then reached out to the family to just make introductions, and we kind of set a meeting and say, I'm going to come up to Michigan. Can we just, meet or whatever with Earl? And so I get on a plane and I go up there, and there's a ton of other college coaches going in, and I happen to fly up with the coach from North Carolina. And we drove up together once we got off the plane, and then we got out to the golf course, and we got the pairings, and we started walking backwards from 18 to kind of catch his group. And his group, we kind of realized his group's on the tee box, and I kind of think I know who he is. And so I asked him, I said, hey, is that Tiger in the white shirt and white hat coming up? And he goes, yeah. And I have to say, when I laid my eyes on him for the first time, he was not a physical specimen. I mean, if you remember the old pictures of Tiger wearing those oversized LeMode shirts, and the hat was too big, and I mean, I looked at him like, this kid doesn't weigh more than $150. And I was like, okay, is there another Tiger Woods? Or like, Mike, are you kidding me? Like this, this guy. Okay, well, so I think he won the long drive competition that week. I think he won the tournament as well. I left before the end of it. But anyway, so in the early rounds when we were following him, I was like, okay, he can play. I mean, clearly he could hit a golf ball. when he was finished, the kids, his group went into the clubhouse where there was a media room. And when I say media room, I'm not talking about like a big tournament setup where there's huge media, whatever. This was like a couple local reporters. There might have been somebody from Golf Magazine or Golf Digest, but it wasn't a big formal setup. But I'm watching these 14-year-olds talk to media, and the other 14-year-olds are looking at the ground. They won't make eye contact with the reporter. They're nervous. They can't put a sentence together. They're 14. And then Tiger steps up and kind of eye-to-eye contact. He's answering the questions. He's very eloquent, very well-spoken. I'm like, okay, this is different. So my first blush was he didn't really knock me out of my socks as a physical specimen, but he handled himself mentally far and away above the other 14-year-olds. And as we all know in sports, I mean, most of it's mental anyway. And so I think that was my first sort of take on, okay, I need to see more, but let me see what happens here. So I just started following him a little bit more and watching him, and obviously he progressed. I mean, then he goes on to win, 3 U.S. junior amateurs in a row and 3 U.S. amateurs in a row. You definitely got something here. So I refer to myself as I kind of became a believer.
Well, certainly there was every reason to believe, but as he's winning all these USGA events, and you're talking about Nike Golf, which wasn't a big deal at the point in time, it must have been the fact that, you had this long-standing relationship that eventually, after he won the U.S. Amateur in 1996, it was time to be able to establish an actual professional relationship. This had to be seen as somewhat of an upset, wouldn't it?
Yes and no. I think that after, when you get to know them and you hear what they want to accomplish, and Tiger's was, hey, I want to be, in a sense, the Michael Jordan of golf. I want to be the best player. I want to win the most tournaments. I want to win the most money, and so on. When you have that kind of vision, then you have to be somewhat smart and strategic about company. So I think the day, as I would pitch it to them, it was like, okay, let's talk about your options. Let's say you sign with Titleist. Okay, you're going to be a golf athlete under the Titleist brand. So you're going to be marketed and promoted within golf publications, golf broadcasts, pretty much confined to the golf world. Pick another golf brand, it's the same thing, but Titleist is the one you would go with because they would want you, they've got the most money, and you would be a high-profile player with them. Now let's talk about non-golf. So there's Nike. Adidas was really young,
right.
But they were, and then Reebok actually was further ahead than Adidas was at the time because they already had Greg Norman, and they had just signed John Daly in '92. So, my pitch was, if you want to do those things you're doing and be marketed and be a global icon, you need to come to Nike. I say, because that's what we do. And, I go, if you go to Reebok, they've already got Norman. He's kind of the number one guy. They just signed Daly. I don't know where you fit and what they'll do to promote you. I said, on our side, we have Curtis Strange and Peter Jacobson, which I didn't want to frame them as aging players, but they were. I mean, they were older. I mean, Curtis had come off his back-to-back U.S. Opens in '88 and '89, but I knew we wouldn't get Tiger potentially until I got out of college in '98. So it was like, you're going to be our future star. You're going to be the one we focus everything on. And the other story that's kind of funny is when I had him out he was at the Pacific Northwest Amateur. I had him out to the campus. We had a big meeting with all the execs and his dad and I took him to the employee store. And in the employee store, on a big wall in the background when you're checking out, were these pictures of our key athletes that were in. Nike had started this internal agency where we wanted to manage the marketing more of the athletes that we had because they really didn't like when Jordan signed the Hanes deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, now we have to have better control over this. So we want to, we'll do the marketing for the athletes. We're not going to be their player agent or, their salary for baseball, football, or whatever. We just want to handle marketing. So there's a picture of Jordan up there, but he's not in this group. But then there's this whole group with Agassi and Griffey Jr. and all these big athletes. We're standing there, and he looks up and he goes, "What?" He goes, "Is there any significance to that group?" I go, "Yeah, they're in this agency." I kind of described that story. And he looks at me and he goes, do you think I could be part of that group? And in that moment, I think it's like I got it. Like, you're not going anywhere else. You know what I mean? It's like, I think
Right.
to me, it was sort of his thing. I want to be here. I want to be part of that group. And that's what I was trying to convince him and Earl was that, yeah, if you want to do this, we're the best place that you can go. Now, again, Nike's still less than 1% of golf is less than 1% of Nike's overall business. So, but I think you can take us places, and you would be somebody that potentially could transcend the sport. And now you could potentially be seen in ads in GQ magazine. You might be in an ad on, primetime television midweek. There's just more opportunities here with what we're doing than the other options.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Hey everybody, Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing here. For almost 10 years, we've been a locally owned and operated family business. At Easton, we work on every job with one thing in mind: integrity matters. I grew up in central Kansas, was raised on the values of respecting hard work. We run our company every day on that value set. At Easton, we always make decisions based on the ethical, right thing for the customer. That's what integrity means to us. So if you have any questions about your roof, give me and my team a call, 913-257-5426, Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Let's have a brief conversation with David Schmidt from Pro Millennial. David, what differentiates you from other financial organizations?
I would say the passion we have for seeing our clients succeed is probably paramount to what we do here. There's no joy greater than watching a client accumulate wealth. I had a client that I've had for many years was able to buy his dream warehouse. Nothing too extravagant, but we had a savings plan in place and was able to see him fulfill his dreams.
And what else motivates you in this industry?
Well, lately it's been finding out inconsistencies in the marketplace, ferreting out some more than questionable ideas out there that what we're seeing with Bitcoin and a few of these other cryptocurrencies right now. I'm in the opinion where if it's untraceable, it really needs to be regulated in a big way right now.
To get more information and advice from David, visit promillennial.com or call 816-221-7775. That's 816-221-7775.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Llewellyn for the 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you so much for supporting local restaurants, especially through this pandemic. And you know what? We're almost through it. At the 23rd Street Brewery, we have brought in a few more tables. You can wear a mask if you want, or not. It's your choice. Other than that, we're open 11:30 every single day. So come see us at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence.
We're here once again with Dr. Brad Woodle from Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. Springtime, good weather's finally here. People want to stay active, and it's your job to make sure that they can stay active, and be healthy.
Danny, we see a lot of not just weekend warriors, but people that every day are having that want to get back to activity. Whether you're starting with walking, jogging, or maybe that first 5K of the year, we want to help you out. We specialize in taking care of all ages, from kids all the way to grandmas and grandpas, but absolutely specialize in getting you back to full function and keeping you in great shape.
So in short, how do we go about doing that?
The first thing is to schedule a consultation with one of our doctors and therapists so we can see how you move and how you're supposed to move. Based on our assessment, we can put together a short treatment plan and a set of goals to help you both feel better, function better, and most importantly, stay better for this year and many years to come.
Learn more at asfca.com/Danny. That's asfca.com/Danny.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Mark Bisbing is our guest, and as you can tell, he is already developing in this story a long and storied history in marketing, sports, and otherwise. If my memory serves me correctly, when he did eventually sign officially on the dotted line with Nike, is the figure $40 million? I somewhat remember that. Is that correct?
It is correct. Now, and again, for perspective, so there was actually a transition within golf in '95, and so I was kind of left in
right
the summer of '95, and then ended up ironically, working in the media room, in the media center at the 96 Amateur at Pumpkin Ridge. So I talked to him briefly when I was there. Actually, I waited in the locker room when he finished after he wanted to have him sign a couple flags for me. And he was at that time going downstairs to a celebration party with Nike and talk about them signing, which nobody really knew about, to be honest. And I was actually driving people on carts out to the parking area, and I got a few people, employees from Nike, I shuttled out there that had been drinking, and were like, did you hear we signed Tiger? We're kind of like talking about the news. I don't think anybody wanted them to daylight it yet. But they're like, hey, we just signed Tiger. And I'm like, okay, well, one, that's 2 years earlier than his parents wanted him to, because they wanted him to finish college. And then he obviously went to Milwaukee, I think, the next week and won his first tournament on the PGA Tour. So, it was a process of getting him kind of in the beginning and laying the groundwork. But I think even when I left, and it was unfortunate because I would have loved to have been able to stay there and kind of play that out.
Right.
But I kind of knew that he wasn't going to go anywhere. So then when I left, another ex-Nike guy and I started a sports marketing company in Portland, actually doing athlete representation. So we made a brief play to try to get him, have us represent him, but he was already pretty well entrenched with IMG. And when the news came out that he signed the deal for $40 million, my partner Fred Schreier, who was the former director of sports marketing at Nike, so did a lot of the big athlete deals. He looked at me and he goes, well, they're not paying him enough. Like the deal, should have been bigger. And this is coming from the guy that managed Nike's side of the sports marketing negotiations. So we just thought it was interesting because obviously his deal after that was, monstrous.
Right. Was there any sense of bittersweet that you put in all the groundwork and you really kind of weren't there to, you saw it finished off, but did you really you didn't get any tangible credit for it, I guess? Was that a sort of a bittersweet thing?
Oh, sure it is. It's like I tell people, it's like I want Tiger to win every tournament he plays in because it just makes my resume look better. So, I knew kind of what I had done and put in place, and it would have been fun to be there to watch this play out and come to fruition, starting from the conversation with Mike Holder to initial doubts to believing to then seeing how it transpired and played out, because I kind of feel like even though, yes, he would have been discovered, potentially would have been signed by Nike, I'm the one that saw it early, put it on the basic sort of building him into our business plan and budget going forward. Even in '92 when Daly won the PGA Championship, I was going to lunch. I ran into Phil Knight as he was coming back in the building, and he stopped me and he goes, have you signed that John Daly guy yet? And I said, well, no. I said, I'm going to recommend we not sign him because there's some things about John that I just don't think we want to align ourselves with. And I said, but there's a kid named Tiger Woods I think we need to be waiting for to sign when he comes out. It might be as late as 98, but it could be earlier just depending on circumstances. So, I believed him. I believed that he was the guy. I thought that he just brought a different perspective from golf. Nobody could anticipate how he was going to come out that fast and what he would do. But I just knew he was going to do something. And you can't predict his success, but you knew he was on a path that if he stayed healthy and stayed focused, he was going to do some big things.
You mentioned Curtis Strange and Peter Jacobson, and at this point in time, you said you played golf. How, and you were involved in golf for 10 years. What kind of a golfer were you, or are you?
When I started, I was not very good. I played golf since I was 9. Right. But I would say when I started at Nike, my handicap was probably around 14. So I was a decent player. But once I got in there and then you were hanging around professionals and all of a sudden now you're hanging around equipment companies who can give you product that's fitted for you and does the right things, my handicap dropped to about a 7. And probably the best golf I played was probably 2 years ago, got my handicap down to about a 5.
There you go. Well, that's certainly...
So I can play. I can get it around. I can play. There's days I can shoot in the 70s, and then days I'm going to shoot in the 90s. Just the way it is.
I know you've also have some stories about some other greats of the game, like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus.
Arnold, it was a good friend of Peter's. And so by default, it was easy to kind of establish a relationship with him just because Peter knew him. So Peter hosted a tournament in Portland called the Bryn Mawr Challenge. Yep. And Arnold was his partner each time. And so I just got to know him over the years. And obviously he had kids, he had grandkids. So we actually got him in the shoes a little bit later. It wasn't an official deal, but he wore them once in a while because they're just comfortable. But I remember just getting him product. And I remember one day going to Bay Hill at the Bay Hill Classic, and I had brought a couple of duffel bags kind of full of some shoes and apparel for his kids and grandkids. And I remember walking the bags into the locker room. So you have tour credentials, so I can go in the locker room. Attendant comes up because, "Can I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yeah, I just have a couple of bags of stuff for Arnold. I just want to put it by his locker. I don't need to talk to him or anything." So Arnie's sitting in the back of the room at the poker table, which is probably his spot. He sees me. He jumps up, comes over. "Hey, Mark, how you doing? Good to see you. What's going on?" I said, "Hey, I don't mean to bother you. I've got a couple bags of stuff here, for your kids and grandkids. I just don't know where you want me to put it." And then he's like, "Man, I can't thank you enough. This is so great." He goes, "I really appreciate you doing this." He goes, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I'm like, now I'm deer in the headlights. I'm like, "Oh gosh, maybe you come to my house for dinner when you're in Portland next time. I'll invite some friends over, whatever." I don't know. I mean, what could Arnold Palmer possibly do for me? I mean, other than what you just did, to be honest, you know? And then he did that a couple times at tournaments. It was kind of odd, but really kind of cool. Like at the PGA Championship at Crooked Stick where Daly won, I was there and I kind of was following his group. And his caddy, Royce, comes over to the ropes and he goes, "Hey, Mark, are you going to follow us for a while?" And I go, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "Arnie wants to come over and say hi. He just wants to know if you're going to be here." I'm like, "Yeah, he's playing in a major championship. He's going to, what?" I mean, but that's who Arnie was. I mean, he fed off the people. So yeah, literally he goes, "I just waited in a spot where there wasn't a lot of people or no people." And he came over and said hello. And he did the same thing at the Masters when I was there once. I'm just like, wow. I mean, I just felt really honored that I was kind of in his world and got to know him. And he was as gracious and as great as you would hope he would be.
Right. And as everybody has said, he was. How about Jack Nicklaus?
I didn't know Jack that well. And what was funny is we compared kind of Curtis and Peter to Jack and Arnie. Peter was Arnie and Curtis was Jack. So Peter was more the people person, outgoing, fed off the crowd. Jack and Curtis were more grinders, intense, kind of like, "I'm doing my business. Let me do what I'm doing here." So I didn't spend a lot of time around Jack other than when he was at the challenge. And I think partly because, he had his own brand, his own company. There wasn't a need for him to really interact with us a ton. Mm-hmm. But again, he was professional, gracious, but just very businesslike, just kind of a different demeanor. Curtis was like that. He was very kind of intense grinder. "I'm here to do a job. I'm here to win a tournament." But when we were in his universe, like when I was at his house or we were out to dinner or something, he would let guard down. He would talk. He would have a beer with you. But they were just completely different people, whereas Peter was so much more outgoing. The interesting thing, Peter was a great golfer. But you didn't sometimes see that come out in him until maybe there was a threat that he was not going to be in the top 125. And then he'd go out and win a tournament.
Right.
It would be interesting to see if he had a little, and they used to joke with each other, that Peter would say, "Curtis, I wish I was a little bit more like you." And Curtis would say, "Yeah, and I wish I was a little bit more like you." It could be a little more easygoing. But it's an interesting combination, but they were great.
And you also have some somewhat golf-related stories about Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to play golf with Michael a couple times, and but when I was in the process of trying to put together the Nike Tour relationship, so again, there's 30 tournaments across the country, Pro-Ams, as you said, you played in one. So the Bulls were playing the Blazers in the playoffs in '92, and Nike campus had a facility there, and they would actually have some of the NBA teams come out and practice before their games. So the Bulls are up in the Bo Jackson building practicing, And he's up there kind of with his group, and Ahmad Rashad's there, and people on site thought, I'm going to go up and talk to him because I want to see if he'll participate in some way. So I go upstairs, and he's sitting over on the side, and he kind of jumps up and greets me again, and how you doing? I said, hey, I don't want to bother you. I said, I just want to borrow you for 15 minutes. If you have time. He goes, yeah, what's going on? I said, well, I'm putting this deal together to sponsor the Nike tour. Here's what it looks like and so on. I want to know if you'd be interested or willing to participate in some of the pro-am events. Would you come out and maybe do some skins games, just to drive attention to our ticket sales and so on? And he goes, pro-ams? He goes, I want to play in the events. Now, at this point, I got Ahmad Rashad's come over. There's some other people standing around. And I look at him and I go, Michael, not to be rude, I said, but I've played golf with you. And Ahmad Rashad starts laughing. And I go, look, the PGA Tour requires a minimum 2 handicap to play in any of their events. And I've played golf with you. And then that's when Rashad starts just cracking up. He goes, oh, dude, he's dissing on his guy yet. And because Rod goes, yeah, I've seen you play too. And I said, okay, Michael, look, here's what I'll do. I said, I promise you that I will approach the tour and ask them if they would let you take up a couple of sponsor exemptions in a couple of events. But I said, but I kind of need to know if you'll do some of this other stuff, as well. And Michael's like, yeah, whatever. But by this time, the rest of the group's kind of laughing and kind of dissing on him and everything. But it worked out. I mean, he did play in a couple of things for me. We did get him into, I think, 1 or 2 events, which the sponsor of those events loved it, regardless of whether it made the cut or not. But it was just another fun interaction when you're inside that world of people that you'll never talk to for a lot of people. I mean, I'm standing in front of Michael Jordan telling me he's a bad golfer, and people are laughing about it, and he didn't hit me. So it was kind of cool.
You also you did a few years at the Pyramid Sports, as you mentioned, but then you did something that was quite fascinating to me and seemingly would be quite a great challenge, which is to be the Vice President of Operations for the PBA, the Professional Bowlers Association, which is a successful enterprise, but it looks like it takes a hell of a lot more work to make it so.
Well, it's funny because if you look into my background, you may not see it that far afield, because when I was at Nike, I did sports marketing for both golf and bowling. And people go, Nike was in bowling? Yeah, for about 3 years, from about 86 to 88, 85, 86 to 88, we made bowling shoes, bowling shirts, bowling bags. And we did $1 million in bowling bags the first year of introduction in 86, 87. And the bowling industry loved us because we were new, we were fresh. It was a new brand there. We signed, Marshall Holman, who was a famous bowler out of Oregon, yep. Dave Husted, another famous bowler out of Oregon. Kid named, can't think of his name right now, young kid out of Southern California, and Mike Albee, who was a big-time left-hander out of Indianapolis. So we had a core staff of key bowlers. Holman, I think, won the Tournament of Champions at Nike stuff. He was kind of our John McEnroe of bowling. He was fiery. He could kick ball returns. He was controversial. Dave Husted was kind of more, very reserved, quite a good golfer. Both of them were good golfers. Dave Husted won 4 U.S. Opens. He's, I think, the most of any player in history. So I'm working with Fred and then some other ex-Nike guys, Ian Hamilton, who was the tennis guy, and a guy named Steve Miller, who head of sports marketing after Fred had left, were hired by the 3 ex-Microsoft guys that bought the PBA Tour out of Akron, Ohio, and moved it to Seattle. So they get hired to come up and help overhaul bowling in this organization. So we're obviously connected to Fred and I, so we're having conversations. We're kind of doing some work for them through Pyramid. And then one day, they just came to me and said, would you be interested in coming up to kind of take over what they called their regional program, which was similar to the Nike Tour. It's kind of their feeder system. What people don't know about professional bowling is when you see the people on TV, there's probably only 90 tour players. But yet the PBA has a membership of over 4,000.
Right.
And those 4,000 members bowl locally. They have full-time jobs, but they have a card in their pocket that says they're a professional bowler by bowling in a league for 2 years, averaging 200 or more. And then they join the PBA and they can play in regional events, and then have the ability to qualify to play in the TV events. And bowling was a struggle. It was a challenge. And we weren't quite as successful as we had hoped, but we did do some things that got a little more notoriety and got it on TV a little bit more, and made some changes. But it's an interesting sport when you're in the pro part of it. Like, I would ask people, how many bowling balls do you think are allowed, can a pro bowler bring into a competition?
I have no idea, but most people would probably think, unlimited.
Well, no, I think most people answer like 2 or 3, because they think, well, they throw one, throw this ball that hooks for a strike, and then they throw something straighter for a spare, so
right.
It must be 2 or 3. Well, the answer is 9.
Wow.
And then it's like, why do they need 9? Well, it has to do with the oil conditions that are put out on the lanes. The ball reacts to what the weight block is, if it hooks more or less, whatever. Once you get into the science and the understanding of the sport, you understand how difficult it is, versus you and I going down to a bowling alley today and hitting house ball and throwing it down on what we would call house lanes.
Sure.
The oil pattern is basically used to put out the water hazards and bunkers for bowlers, and they've got to find their way around it. And even more difficult is they can't see the oil.
Right.
So
very interesting.
Yeah. It's once you dive into it, it's interesting. But it was fun. It was fun to be part of that sport. And then again, I've bowled since I was a kid, and it was just interesting to see the highest level of competition and the challenges that we created for them in a tournament environment.
Actually, the connection that has led me to you is from your time at the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, and that's your connection to this area where you're back again now, as we talked about at the outset. It's an organization that does outstanding work for a group of people, the superintendents, who might be among the most fascinating and hardworking people that you're ever going to be around. That's a cool organization. It must have been rewarding to be part of that, too.
It was. I mean, and again, they're kind of the unseen heroes of golf. Most golfers, when they go to a facility, are going for the golf course. They're not going for the hot dogs or the golf shirts in the pro shop. They're there because of either the ranking of that golf course or the conditioning of that golf course. It could be the design. I mean, you'd have to throw the designer into that mix as well, because the designer comes in, designs it, boom, moves on. They're not there. But yeah, and the way I framed it when I went there was that I would see the golf course superintendent as an environmentalist. They managed, a landscape, and they tried to do it in an environmentally sound way. So my pitch was always, how do we project that message and kind of separate ourselves from maybe some of the other golf organizations? My pitch, which never really came to fruition, although I still keep in touch with Red Evans, who's the CEO there, and I bug him every time I talk to him, is I said, we need to create a top 100 list of golf courses based solely on sustainability. So it's not like the Golf Digest Top 100 where it's all subjective. You like Pine Valley, I like Augusta, somebody else likes Pebble Beach. This is truly about how they manage those properties. And with what's going on today with the climate change discussion and so on, I said, this could really resonate. And I said, I have a feeling you can find consumers that would want to go play facilities that they would see on a list that would be environmentally sound. Not to mention, what are the golf courses in their local communities doing? As far as managing water, managing chemical inputs, and so on. I just thought it was a way for them to differentiate and build their brand of GTSA, because they do sit a little bit behind, the PGA Tour, the PGA of America, USGA. They're a little bit of the stepchild of that group. But you're right, they do fabulous work.
Well, you've done fabulous work, and it's kind of come full circle for you to do something that, as we mentioned, again, was a labor of love. And you did a short stint of time with the First Tee, which is somewhat in the same vein. It's been an incredible and varied ride. You don't have the resume of a assistant football coach, but you do have a varied one with great stops. It sounds like you've had tremendous satisfaction in the various challenges that you've had in your career.
Yeah, I think it's, the diversity of it, I think, is what's been fun. I think when you go back to my comment about not going to college, I don't know that you would see a resume like this necessarily from that. Now, have I, been a president or a CEO or anything? No. And I'm not sure that's, maybe even what I would aspire to do. But I think what I've been is adaptable and a little bit chameleon-like to kind of go into an entity, kind of be able to see the landscape and the picture, and then look at a bigger vision and how we can go to a different place. I don't know why I'm like that. I don't know, how that developed in me, but that's usually been my success, is that I'll take and look at what we have and go, okay, we need to go over here. And this is what it's going to do for us by going over here and doing these things. So I'm always kind of doing the what if, or let's think bigger. Like even with Jobs for America's graduates, we're in 79 schools across the state of Kansas. Well, there's 393 public high schools in the state of Kansas. That's where we need to be. It's a crazy goal, crazy idea, but if you're going to serve at-risk students, then I want to be on the ground in every school to do that. So now how do we get there? So yeah, I'm always kind of looking, for the bigger idea, or to get people to think that way to a certain degree.
And having that kind of vision, where do you think that came from?
I don't know. It could have been, part of it may go back to my learnings when I was a kid playing Pop Warner football. And I was fortunate enough to have a coach who played quarterback at Compton College and USC. And I think part of it was that drill of, you've got to get your eyes up and you've got to see what the whole defense is doing, not just what's going on with the line right in front of you. And I think that might be part of it, is just, again, lifting your head up and seeing this bigger vision, and knowing what the defenders are doing so you can pick the right receiver to be throwing to, or what's happening. Not that you shouldn't pay attention to what the line's doing. If somebody's coming there and knock your head off, you got to be prepared for that. But I think it was that. It's like I described that sometimes as we get our heads down in the grind and we're doing what we do. Sometimes you got to sit back, look up, and see the bigger picture to have a better understanding of what's possible. So if I had to point to one thing, I think it might be that.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.